this, isn't it? Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. We've got a whole gang right there in that spot, in that section. That's good. It's so cold in here, you've got to huddle up together. No, good to see you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to each and every one of you. We begin by embracing all that you bring with you to this space, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. And this includes those of you who are in the room with us this morning, in the sanctuary with us here in Spokane, as well as those of you who are joining us via our live stream and via Zoom this morning. So welcome to one and all. One quick announcement. A fellow from Elk, Washington, who was here yesterday with the LGBTQ seniors group, brought a bunch of his eggs. He takes great pride in feeding his chickens only the best and polishing each egg himself. And so he has several dozen still back there. And they are, you can see them back there in the boxes. And they're $3 a dozen. Just beautiful eggs. And he had some left over. I said, well, if you leave them, I'll let the congregation know tomorrow that they are there. He says he never makes any money on them. He never, just tries to break even. And so much so that if you will bring the cartons back, if you want, when you're done with them, he'll recycle those and reuse them down the road as well. So anyway, if you want eggs, feel free to drop $3 in the box back there and get yourself a dozen eggs. No limit, he says. For those who are Zooming and streaming with us, I'm sorry that we can't transport those eggs to you, but we will crack one open in your honor or something. So, I do want to welcome, as we do, particularly our first service, the folks who are Zooming with us. It's wonderful to be able to interact with you a little bit, and also know that you can interact a bit with each other during our service, as well as during a Zoom social hour after the service. And I try to get on that myself now and then. And by the way, if you're here and you ever wanted to join the Zoom group for their social hour, you can do so easily on your phone if you have the Zoom app. So that's another way to engage.
But make sure you use your cellular.
But make sure you use your cellular.
If they use our Wi-Fi, it'll make the bandwidth.
Oh, so use your cellular, not the Wi-Fi, your cellular data, not the Wi-Fi or the bandwidth.
We're already working it to the max.
Working the bandwidth. Okay, thank you, Todd, for letting us know. But I do want to, I think Stephen Palmer is the social host this morning. So hi to you, Stephen. And we're not able, as we were at the start of this, to let everybody introduce themselves because the Zoom group has grown so much. But I wonder if there might be a couple of folks who we haven't heard from yet who would like to introduce themselves and tell us where they're from, a little bit about themselves. What do you think, Stephen?
Yes, you'll have to unmute yourself to do that. We have about 17 people and one cat at the moment. And if the new people want to say hello for the first time, that would be wonderful.
Hello.
Oh,
Yeah.
Who was that?
Hi, my name's Carlos, and
And
we're
you're
down
from?
we're down in Oaxaca, Mexico, for the winter.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Carlos and Penny, good to see you. Yeah, I'm glad you can join us via Zoom.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool, and I appreciate your continuing to stay in touch with me via email, and I think a lot of folks are glad to see you on Zoom this morning. So thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Yes, thank you, and thank you all of our Zoomers for being here. It's great to have you participating in our service, and I think we have just about an equal number on Zoom as are in the room today. So that balances us out well. So wonderful.
Hello, I'll say hello.
Oh yes, please.
I'm Jack Reich, calling in from DeKalb, Illinois.
And Bruce, would you say hello?
This is Bruce Knotts, and I'm back again this week. Happy to be here, and I'm calling in from New York City.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, thank you both, all of you, for being here. Bruce, great to have you again, and Jack, of course, my humanist friend, who's involved in the UU Humanist group, has been for years. Got me involved with it, or at least to become a lifetime member. So always great to have you as well. All right, let's take a few moments now at the start of our service to greet one another. And I guess if you're on Zoom, you can say hi to each other there. If you're in the room, you can take a short walk. Or actually, you guys can just turn your heads this morning. And if you would like to say something, reach out. If you're streaming with us, feel free to shoot us a text.
Stress too much, just to get a nerve, like the UUA, yeah. I was thinking maybe I didn't do this during the fluff. Kind of writing a statement of why we stand, they wrote a statement of why they left. Not necessarily aimed at, but aimed at them in a way, and still get a meaning. I have a feeling they're struggling. Yeah, minister was here. One time I started something about
All right, more opportunity to visit as usual during our social hour following the service. But let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
I vividly remember a streetcar ride in Soviet-occupied Prague in the 1960s when I was a college student. The Czech tram conductor recognized me as an American and whispered a harsh critique of the city's Russian occupiers. He addressed me in German, a language we both spoke. Suddenly, two well-dressed men entered the car, and the conductor broke off our conversation with a warning. Der Feind ist immer mit. The enemy is always amongst us. That warning is also found in Czesław Miłosz's book, The Captive Mind, about the inner lives of people living under totalitarianism. Written in 1951, the small book by the Polish intellectual is still pertinent today because liberalism and dissent is under repeated assault, both here and abroad. Miłosz drew a bright line as he compared the daily lives of people in repressive countries to those in liberal democracies. Behind the Iron Curtain, public life is a form of acting, Miłosz wrote. Such acting is a highly developed craft that places a premium upon mental alertness. Before it leaves the lips, every word must be evaluated as to its consequences. A smile that appears at the wrong moment, a glance, can occasion dangerous suspicions and accusations. When a visitor from a totalitarian state visits the West, he's shocked, Miłosz said. The people he meets are completely relaxed. They lack that internal concentration which betrays itself in a lowered head or restlessly moving eyes. They say whatever words come to their tongues. They laugh aloud. Is it possible that human emotions can be so direct? In 1981, the year after he'd won the Nobel Prize for Literature, Miłosz revised the preface to his 30-year-old book, warning people in the West that their freedoms were also under assault. He wrote from Berkeley, his new home, "I have won my freedom, but let me not forget that I stand in daily risk of losing it once more."
I think this next hymn actually reflects where we are, or where we hope to be in the West, at least. So please rise as you're willing and able to sing "Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire," number 34 in the gray hymnals, if you choose that, or the screen. Thank you.
And
now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and want to begin with a candle, as we have been for some time, on behalf of the people of Ukraine who are suffering unnecessary violence there, as are many others in that region of the world. And also, of course, a candle on behalf of the people of Turkey and Syria who are suffering from the terrible consequences of one of the worst earthquakes in my memory. Do also want to kindle a candle celebrating. It was the 5th anniversary, although they sang happy birthday and had a birthday cake yesterday, so maybe we'll say the 5th birthday of the LGBTQ seniors group that has been meeting in our church ever since then. And they invited Peggy and I to come and be part of that celebration yesterday, and that explains the eggs as well, but thought it'd be appropriate today to congratulate them during our services and to let them know how much we appreciate having them as part of our church community. So let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in the world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world. Time for our time for all ages. I brought a special guest as usual today. Some of you may recognize this fellow. This is my old pal. Oh, get your ear off your eyes there. There you go. Now we can see you. Well, this is, of course, my old friend Goofy. Great to see you, Goofy. Well, it's good to see you. Thank you very much. What brings you here today? Well, it was my shoes. Your shoes. Okay, I guess that's true. Are you telling me that you walked all the way here from Disneyland? Yep, well, one step at a time. Okay, well, that's probably the best way to do it. What brings you here? What's on your mind? Well, I guess it's my hat. Yes, everybody can see that wonderful hat of yours. But I mean, what are you thinking? What are you thinking today? What's the reason for you being here? Well, you see, I came to get my opinion. Well, you came to give your opinion. Yep. Okay, well, what is it? Well, does it matter? Well, of course it matters. This is the Unitarian Church, and we like to hear all sorts of opinions. So what opinion are you here to give? Well, I don't really have any particular opinion. You don't have, okay, I'm afraid I don't quite understand. You came all this way to give your opinion, but you haven't anything particular on your mind. Well, of course I do. Okay, well, go ahead. It's my hat. Well, okay. Yeah, your hat is on your head. Your opinion is in your head, so to speak. Well, that explains it. I thought it was water from my shower this morning. No. Listen, I just mean that an opinion is something that you're thinking about, Goofy, something that you'd like to share with others. Well, I'd like to share my lunch with others. Well, that's very kind of you, but lunch is food, it's not an opinion. An opinion is the thoughts in your head that you share with your words. Well, there's nothing in my head but a little extra water this morning. Okay, Goofy. Well, you must have an opinion about something. Let's see, what about politics? Did you watch any news this week? Well, was it on the Disney Channel? No, I doubt it. Well, then I didn't watch it. Okay, well, let's see. How about the president? How do you think the president, what kind of job do you think the president's doing? Well, I've never asked how he's doing. Okay. What about the weather? Everybody has an opinion about the weather. Well, not me, rain or shine, I'm just fine. Okay, Goofy. I'm a little confused. You said that you walked all the way here to give your opinion, but you don't have an opinion to give. Well, I heard this was a place where everyone's opinion counted, but I didn't think to bring one of my own. Maybe you can give me one of yours. Well, I'm afraid that's not quite how it works, Goofy. We certainly welcome opinions, but we don't tell others what they should think, so you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. Hey, I like that idea. Figure it out for myself. You know what, Goofy? I sure do. What? I think you just shared your opinion. Well, I just can't wait to tell Mickey Mouse. That's just great. Well, good. And while you're at it, why don't you give Donald Duck a piece of your mind? Well, I don't think there's enough to go around. Okay. Thank you, Goofy. See you next time. Yes, even goofy opinions are welcome here. Moral of the story.
As we prepare for meditation, I invite you to relax, center yourself, and reflect on these words from Romans 12. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds.
Karen's opening words and reflection were just so outstanding today. I'm glad I brought an outstanding reading of my own because Not that it's a competition, but really good stuff today. Thank you so much. Yeah, and just perfect for today's message. But this is a reading from What If the World Went Humanist? 10 Sermons by John Dietrich. And this is from his the last part of a sermon he gave called the Immortal in Man. The Immortal in Man. And I thought it really reflects, even though he doesn't mention human dignity in this reading, the words reflect a profound belief in human dignity, in human worth, in human agency. Think of life here, its sanctity, its augustness. Use its opportunities to prove the sublime stature a human soul can reach on earth. Thus will be strengthened the conviction that no good can be wasted. The labor without end for excellence, this is that which makes life worth living. And when the last minute is struck, to look back over the years and be able to say, I have at least tried to fill them with the work of a true man or woman. This will let us close our eyes in peace. This is the consolation of the humanist. For me, to have made one soul, the better for my birth. To have added but one flower to the garden of the earth. To have struck one blow for truth in the daily fight with lies. To have done one deed of right in the face of calumnies. To have sown in the souls of men one thought that will not die. To have been a link in the chain of life shall be my immortality.
That nice key of A. I used to play the oboe, and the conductor would ask for me to tune to play the A, and it would sound something like this. Well, we'll get to that A pretty soon. First, we got to cross a bridge or two. We're heading in the wrong direction. We're heading for a brutal time. At the next intersection, reach for a new paradigm. All aboard the universal line. It's a cool state of mind, yeah. No bands, no bigotry, no prior history. This train is right on time. And it's coming down the track, I can hear it. When you meet the other side, across the great divide, open your mind and ye shall find common ground on the new universal line. off your big high horse. And don't be rude or swaggering or know-it-all, of course. Kindness and honesty opens every door. When you're riding on the universal line, step up to the universal line. There's room for all of humankind. You can be mad as a hatter, it really doesn't matter. You're welcome on that universal line. This train is right on. This train is right on. This train is right on time.
Pam, I don't even know what to say. I just so much appreciate that you always write these songs just for us and in a style that is completely your own. And it just, you remind us of the importance of creating a world of social justice in a way that only honky tonk can inspire us to do. So thank you. So I want to begin this morning with an unusual take on Western philosophy that is entirely my own. I know of no other philosophers who've said anything similar and can't think of any one of them who would agree with me. To the contrary, I imagine most philosophers would strongly disagree, which probably means I'm wrong. Nonetheless, my thesis is this. Much of what has been considered and taught as philosophy emerged in reaction against philosophy and should be considered its antithesis. And I don't want to go too deeply into this provocative claim now, yet to understand the history of liberalism and historical resistances to it, it's helpful to know how frequently and continuously it has been countered by the emergence of illiberal schools of thought that have overshadowed and stalled its promise and progress. Nevertheless, these liberal, antithetical schools of thought came to be included among the many ideas we now count as philosophy. The very first of these anti-philosophers was none other than Socrates, who for many is counted among the greatest of philosophers. And I can hear the entire philosophical world shrieking at the very suggestion that he of all people should not be considered a philosopher. Yet the demarcation between Socrates and what philosophy was considered before him is made clear through the teaching of philosophy itself. Every philosopher before Socrates, the originators of philosophy, the first philosophers, are called pre-Socratic because of how significantly Socrates diverged from them. The early philosophers, beginning with Thales of Miletus, born in Asia Minor roughly 2,600 years ago, were the first thinkers we know of who attempted to explain how the world works in natural rather than supernatural terms, using math, astronomy, experimentations, Thales and other pre-Socratic philosophers came up with elemental, atomic, evolutionary, and heliocentric theories about nature and the universe, and discovered things like musical octaves, irrational numbers, meteorology, and certain medical breakthroughs in scientific experimentation. This is why Aristotle later referred to these earliest philosophers as the physikoi, the physicist. So extraordinary and unprecedented were they that philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "The rise of Greek civilization, which produced this outburst of intellectual activity, is one of the most spectacular events in history. Nothing like it has ever occurred before or since." Most importantly for our purposes is to understand that for these early philosophers to have discovered so much, they had to believe that they could. They had to believe, that is, in their own human agency and ability to reason. They had to believe that they did not need the gods, nor authorities, nor dictums to understand the world, but that they could figure it out for themselves. And it is this positive attitude toward human agency and human reason that is the seed from which liberalism sprouts. Rooted in its first principle, human dignity. This is not to suggest that Socrates was anti-human. He was clearly a very wise and thoughtful figure whose ideas deserve to be considered and put into practice. He is to be contrasted from the early philosophers, however, because he turned away from their focus on physics and on matter. Socrates turned his interest inward. "Know thyself," he said. "The unconsidered life is not worth living." While still a young man, he turned his attention away from physics to ethics because of the former's fruitless quest to know reality. Because of the former's fruitless quest to know reality, which he called a waste of energy, when the far more important question of how we should live goes unanswered. Socrates didn't want to understand the natural world, but wanted to achieve moral excellence and know what it takes to live the good life. In this sense, he might better be considered a pop psychologist or a self-help guru than a philosopher. Plato, who introduces us to the historical Socrates in his early writings and later uses him as a rhetorical device to espouse his own ideas, diverged from the pre-Socratic philosophers that he discounted, so much so that he discounted the natural realm altogether, claiming that a non-physical realm of perfect forms ought to be considered the true reality. Despite his idealism, which has nothing to do with the thinking of the first philosophers, Plato remains a household name, though most would be hard-pressed to name a single pre-Socratic philosopher. Can you name one? Even though I gave you the name of one, right? You still can't. Who was it? Thales of Miletus. That's about the only one. So after Plato came the great Aristotle, still in the 4th century BCE, who righted the ship again by emphasizing physics and reason. Historian A.C. Grayling begins his chapter on Aristotle by saying, if Aristotle were alive today, he would be a scientist and most likely a biologist. He would have a lively interest in scientific method and logic. Like the first philosophers, Aristotle, who created formal logic, the principles of which have lasted to this day, highly valued our ability to reason, so much so that he considered it our defining quality. Thus, the secret of our happiness, he thought, is to live up to that thing which is distinctive and defining of humanity, namely the possession of reason. But after Aristotle, the Cynics, Stoics, and Epicureans emerged, inspired by Socrates, re-emphasized developing guidelines for living a good and ethical life. Until then, philosopher William Irvine says, philosophers were primarily interested in explaining the world around them and the phenomenon of that world in doing what we now call science. But as the Roman Stoic Epictetus said, what do I care whether all existing things are composed of atoms or indivisibilities or of fire and earth? Is it not enough to learn the true nature of the good and the evil? Very different emphasis. This again is not to say that cynicism, stoicism, Epicureanism, this latter of which is probably more in line with the first philosophers because of its focus on nature and naturalism, but Epicureanism was also focused mainly on how to live the good life, not the nature of things. But these, along with the wisdom of Socrates, aren't to say that these are not valuable ways of coping with life. You know, they are. I love studying them myself. But their goal of living a good and happy life is entirely different than the pre-Socratic goal of understanding the natural world and how it works. Yet as philosopher W.J. Oates writes, at least in its early stages, the orientation of philosophy was to the external world. In this respect, especially knowing that Socrates, the Cynics, Stoics, and Epicureans largely avoided the abstractions of the first philosophers, it is fair to say that their thinking was antithetical to it. And it is difficult to understand how two things so different can be called by the same name, philosophy. I won't go much more into the history of philosophy here, but want to consider what I've already said to illustrate what I consider this back and forth between philosophy's original emphasis on various ideological reactions against it, all of which oddly are called philosophy. Just prior to the Christian era, the skeptics and sophists also emerged, who respectively denied that human beings can obtain knowledge, even through reason, and that we can therefore use fallacious reasoning to argue anything we wish is true. When Christianity became dominant in the 4th century CE, almost all philosophy was considered heresy and paganism. An estimated 90% of the works of antiquity were destroyed because of this hostility. Imagine having 90% more ancient philosophers to study. Neoplatonism became the dominant mindset, which lent itself well to a religion obsessed with having the right ideas and perfection in non-material heaven than with hard facts and physical reality. The Roman Catholic Church dominated Western society for nearly a millennium until the Reformation weakened its stronghold. Once some were able to question its doctrines and challenge its authority, the Renaissance began. In the 1300s, Renaissance, which means renewal, was named so for the rediscovery and renewed interest in the pre-Socratic philosophers, particularly their approach to understanding. That's what the Renaissance was, going back to the beginning, 2,600 years ago. And with this came a renewed appreciation for their approach, which meant an appreciation for humanity, human agency, human reason, and human dignity, and a recognition that individuals should be free to determine and express their own beliefs, and that societies must be tolerant of ideological differences. Right? That's in contrast to the medieval world. This is the attitude that spread and flourished during the Enlightenment period in the 16 and 1700s. The Enlightenment philosophy rooted in the proto-scientific thinking of the pre-Socratic philosophers 2,600 years ago, can be summarized as a belief in human dignity that results in freedom, reason, and tolerance. Freedom means that every person must be free to think and speak for themselves and to choose their own purposes and meaning. Reason means every person has the capacity to think and consider the empirical evidence before them in the pursuit of truth and understanding. Ideological dictums and religious dogmas should not be imposed upon them. Just like the pre-Socratics, we believe we can figure it out. And tolerance means every person, regardless of their specific ideologies and identities, should have equal standing and equal access to the benefits and protections of society. When these are society's overarching principles, it progresses. When they aren't, it does not. We've already seen all that was accomplished during those couple of hundred years by the pre-Socratic philosophers once they were able to explore the physical world on its own terms, free from superstition and dogma. Yet after the pre-Socratic era, when philosophical navel-gazing began, followed by the advent of the Holy Roman Empire and its dogmatism, little to no progress was made for more than 1,000 years. It wasn't until the Renaissance, precipitated by the invention of the printing press in the 15th century, that dogma lost its hold, because communication became rampant and society necessarily became more curious and tolerant and open as a result. This mindset flourished during the Enlightenment period between the 17th and 18th centuries, or in the 17th and 18th centuries, leading to a century of unprecedented advances in the 19th century, the 1800s. As the Unitarian humanist minister John Dietrich put it, it was this movement of liberalism which marks the 19th century as the most remarkable period of human history. In fact, the 19th century did more to add to the sum total of human life than all the centuries of the Christian era put together. For those who weren't around in the 1800s, the Canadian scientist and distinguished professor emeritus of Manitoba University, Vaclav Smil, explains it well in his 2020 book, Numbers Don't Lie. Some might think the 21st century has had the most profound inventions in history, but not according to Smil, because, he says, most recent advances have been variations of two older fundamental discoveries, microprocessors and exploiting radio waves, which occurred during the 19th century. In fact, Smil says perhaps the most inventive time in human history was the 1880s. That's when electricity became a household commodity thanks to the invention of thermal and hydropower generation stations that still provide 80% of the world's electricity. Still. It's also when the first electromagnetic waves were discovered, leading to the first wireless communications technology, the radio. Electric irons, multi-story steel skyscrapers, the steam turbine, coin-operated vending machines, the four-stroke combustion engine, elevators, revolving doors, electric streetcars, electric motors, cash registers, x-rays, ultraviolet light, infrared radiation, microwaves, chain-driven bicycles for safety, and other inventions that our lives and technology still depend upon today were all discovered in the 19th century, immediately following the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, an explosion of creativity. The Enlightenment also led to significant social revolutions. It was the Enlightenment principles, freedom, reason, and tolerance rooted in human dignity that led the framers of the U.S. Constitution to fashion our fragile democracy. And what happened less than 100 centuries later, also in the 1800s? The Civil War. A battle to correct what was not accomplished with the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution, ending the scourge of slavery. According to political scientist Francis Fukuyama, this occurred in part because of the Enlightenment's notion that all human beings are equal in dignity or worth despite their evident natural or social differences. And, he says, because of this, slaves were themselves becoming empowered through increasing consciousness of their own worth. The Enlightenment teaches us we have dignity. You can't treat us as less than. German philosopher Heinrich Treitschke once said, "Everything new that the 19th century created is the work of liberalism." And Fukuyama says the same is true in general. Historically, liberal societies have been engines of economic growth, creators of new technologies, and producers of vibrant art and culture, and this occurred precisely because they were liberal. But this hasn't happened by magic, but because the tenets of liberalism allow individuals the freedom to explore new ideas and to use their own minds to interpret empirical facts in order to discover and create, and to do so in a society that tolerates different and new ways of understanding and being in the world. This is why these are the only principles by which a society can make genuine social, economic, and technological advances. We have to have the freedom and the trust and the tolerance to be able to have these giant leaps forward. Yet each time we get close to establishing a healthy and genuinely liberal society, its antithesis emerges to thwart us. For the first philosophers, it was oddly enough Socrates' introspection and Plato's idealism that subjugated them to being merely pre-Socratic. An incidental footnote in the history of philosophy before it really began. Aristotle briefly got us back on track with his emphasis on logic and science, but his ideas were also subsumed by the cynical Stoic and Epicurean self-help gurus, along with those who were skeptical that any truth could be known, and those who exploited such uncertainty to make anything they wanted sound true. Whenever materialist and empiricist philosophies emerge, holding that matter or physics is the fundamental nature of reality and that truth is derived through sensory experience, they were met by rationalists and skeptics who argued truth is derived by thought. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, and that it is not possible to know objective truth. A.C. Grayling says that one of the earliest opponents of the Enlightenment was Romanticism. The Romantics, he said, asserted instead the primacy of emotion over reason, and accordingly celebrated the subjective, the personal, the visionary, and the irrational. They gave us a privileged place to moods and passions as sources of insight and as arbiters of truth, and this is called philosophy. Toward the end of the 19th and start of the 20th century's philosophers like pragmatist John Dewey, logician and mathematician Bertrand Russell, and humanist John Dietrich restored philosophy to its pre-Socratic roots, only to have these sensibilities challenged again with the emergence of postmodernism. The rejection of science and empiricism and the notion that there is no such thing as objective truth or a common human nature. All truth is subjective, and any belief is just as good as another. And today, wokeism. Wokeism is the latest incarnation of idealism, romanticism, rationalism, postmodernism, and so forth. A rejection of objective facts and empirical experience in favor of one's subjective beliefs and lived experience. In the 21st century, liberalism is additionally despised by conservatism, which seeks to slow our altogether halt progress, and neoliberalism, the belief that governments should have no power to regulate or tax organizations, which is often labeled conservatism. But there's nothing conservative about it. True liberalism, on the other hand, accepts governments are necessary to protect the rights of individuals within a democratic framework. Nationalism, communism, and authoritarianism are also current antithetical challenges to liberalism. All of this is to say that liberalism is currently in peril, which means humanity is in peril, because we cannot live in peace together, overcome our greatest challenges together, or make progress together without the only tools that have ever enabled us to do so. Recognizing human dignity resulting in societies that are necessarily based upon freedom, reason, and tolerance. Today, those on both the extreme right and extreme left prefer to silence and demonize those they disagree with, uplift subjective experience and alternative facts as objective truth, and are as uncivil toward as they are intolerant of others. This is why liberalism must survive and come to thrive again, because it is the only philosophy that can unite our society and our species in order for us to make that next giant leap forward, so that perhaps some wise person in the future can look back and say of our time, it was this movement of liberalism that made the 21st century as the most remarkable period in human history. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not too late. We're just getting started. Whether we call ideologies antithetical to liberalism philosophy or not, liberalism is the only ideology that has proven to advance human welfare and individual worth, always trudging against similar currents of resistance to deny reason and physics and objective truth, but succeeds nonetheless. Despite renewed political, religious, and social forces that renounce hard reality and scientific facts and that prevent progress, liberalism has proven to have staying power, and its principles continually recur to bring tangible hope and meaningful improvements to our existence. Today, liberalism is ridiculed, demeaned, mischaracterized by those on both the left and the right of things, and has become misunderstood by most as a result of all the negativity and bad press. Even many of us who are profoundly liberal in our spirits cannot articulate what it means and are reluctant to use the word to describe ourselves and our values. But its definition and values are easy to articulate and recall. Liberalism is a belief in human dignity that results in freedom, reason, and tolerance. Liberalism is a belief, a devotion to human dignity that results in freedom, reason, and tolerance. If this simple sentence describes you and what you most value, then you are a liberal. And I hope you are. Because our confused and divided world needs liberals and needs to become liberal now more than ever. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to close with a song that may feel automatic in this case, if you look at Todd's sermon. What the world needs now is love. So please rise as you're willing and able to sing it with me. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. To some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another meadow. There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow. There are sunbeams and moonbeams enough to shine. Oh, listen, Lord, if you want to know what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. No, not just for some, oh, but just for everyone.
As we leave today, let us remember the words of poet T.S. Eliot in his 4 quartets. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.
Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom,
Check, 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 test. Check, 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 test. Check, 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 test, 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 test. Check, 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 check.